Welcome to Factory on Air by DBR77, where smart manufacturing gets real. This is episode 21, Warehouse Organization, how DBR77 brings order and flow. Messy warehouses create costly delays, errors, and space problems. In this episode, we dive into how real-time data, 3D simulations, and digital twins can turn a chaotic storage area into a streamlined, data-driven logistics hub. You'll hear how DBR77 helps manufacturers test new layouts, reduce picking time, optimize space, and improve ergonomics before moving a single rack. Better flow, fewer mistakes, and a warehouse that works with your production, not against it. Factory on Air is powered by DBR77, the platform that transforms your warehouse into a smart, efficient, and scalable engine of production. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are here to transform complex industrial challenges into actionable strategic insights. Today, we are taking a deep dive into, well, what you might call the engine room of modern commerce, the industrial warehouse. Our mission today is pretty specific. We're analyzing the strategic foundation of internal logistics, intralogistics, really, and how organization, within the facility dictates the success of the entire business. We're aiming to move beyond just thinking about storage. We want to explore that shift from, let's say, reactive management, where you're just putting out fires, to a more proactive, data-driven optimization strategy. It's really about building a system of perfect flow. So if you're working to get your head around advanced supply chain principles, or maybe you just need a shortcut to understanding how these sophisticated digital tools are now used to impose order on what can often feel like, well, total chaos, then this deep dive is definitely structured for you. We're going to dissect a body of research detailing a really powerful, integrated way of doing things.
It's centered on modeling and data intelligence to achieve, frankly, unprecedented operational excellence.
Yeah, it's a crucial conversation to have. We're really looking at those foundational elements, the things that allow large industrial operations not just to keep up, but actually to set the pace. The core principle we're exploring today is transparency. It's about taking every single movement, every item placement, every second of operation, and making it measurable, visible, and this is key, predictable. This approach ensures that the movement of goods inside your facility becomes a strategic asset, not just a constant headache or liability.
Okay, so before we jump into the high-tech solutions, we really need to appreciate the severity of the problem first. Let's talk symptoms. What does poor organization actually look like? If I walk into a facility where the flow is broken, what specific measurable chaos am I going to see right there on the floor?
Well, that observable chaos, it translates almost immediately into quantifiable financial drain. The symptoms are pretty relentless. First, you're definitely going to witness massive losses in efficiency and time, just wasted time everywhere. This is usually most acute during the really repetitive processes, especially order picking or complete tatcha, as it's sometimes termed. When layouts are poorly planned, your operators, they end up walking significant unnecessary distances. We're talking adding hours to every single shift.
Right.
So that's time wasted during picking, time wasted collecting goods for shipping, or maybe feeding a production line. That inefficiency, it just caps your throughput, doesn't matter how fast your machinery is.
Yeah, I can picture that. An operator who probably knows the warehouse like the back of their hand, but they still have to zigzag all over the place, maybe dodging forklifts, just to grab items for one order. It must be physically exhausting and mentally draining too.
Exactly. And, that leads directly to the second critical cost, the human cost. When the system itself is broken, the people trying to work within it, they suffer. Non-ergonomic conditions, think long travel times, unclear routes, constantly searching for things. It just leads to intense frustration. Our sources actually highlight a pretty direct link between these chaotic operational environments and high staff turnover.
Okay.
People leave jobs that feel unnecessarily difficult or where they feel like they're constantly fighting the system just to get their work done. And then, of course, the company loses all that built-up knowledge and has to keep paying for training new people. It's a cycle.
So the inefficiency ripples straight over to HR.
Wow.
What about the physical failures? Beyond just walking too far, how does the chaos actually show up in the movement of materials?
You see very tangible logistical failures, things like route collisions, forklifts and operators constantly getting in each other's way, creating safety risks and delays. It's inefficient. You see a lack of a clear, coherent logic to the layout. Items just get put wherever there's space, not where they actually make sense for the flow. And a huge symptom is difficulty in buffer management, those temporary holding areas. They often become these operational black holes. Inventory gets misplaced or delayed just because the input-output flow isn't managed well, isn't documented properly.
Right, the buffers get clogged.
Exactly.
So when you add up all those operational wastes, the lost time, the turnover costs, the delays in the buffer zones, the financial burden must be enormous.
Yeah.
How does this disorganization hit the balance sheet beyond just labor costs?
Well, the financial drain is sort of twofold. First, there's the waste of money on the inefficient activities themselves. You're paying people, often premium wages, for non-value added work like searching, waiting, traveling extra miles. Second, and this is really crucial, poor organization often leads to massive financial commitments in unnecessary inventory. It's the cost of excess stock, or ZAPAC. See, if managers can't trust the location accuracy or the quantities their system is telling them, maybe because the physical flow is just too chaotic, what's the natural reaction? It's protective. They overorder. They hold way more safety stock than they probably need just to mitigate the risk of running out, and all that excess inventory. It ties up critical capital, consumes valuable warehouse space, and often it forces companies into expensive physical expansions much sooner than they'd planned.
Okay, so if we pull this all together, the problem isn't just that the warehouse is disorganized. It's that this disorganization creates a fundamental lack of transparency and predictability. Achieving order, then, it's not just a nice to have. It's basically the mandatory starting point for any real efficiency. And inefficiency inside the warehouse, it just treats this catastrophic ripple effect hitting customer service, finance, HR, facilities planning, everything.
Precisely. You absolutely cannot strategically manage or improve something you can't accurately measure. Chaos, fundamentally, is just the inability to measure performance accurately. And until you get that baseline organization sorted, every attempt at optimization is really just, well, a hopeful guess. It's not data-driven.
Okay, so we've established that chaos is expensive, it's unsustainable. Now, the traditional solution might have been, shut everything down for weeks, hire a consultant, spend a fortune, and maybe implement a risky new physical layout. But modern logistics just can't afford that kind of downtime, can it? So how do managers plan these big fundamental changes without interrupting their current running operations?
Right, and this is where the strategic pivot happens. And it's enabled entirely by sophisticated modeling technology. We introduce the concept of the digital twin, or Cyphery Bluniac. Now, this is far more than just a simple CAD drawing or some static 3D model you look at. The digital twin is truly an interactive, mathematical, and dynamic simulation environment. Its purpose is to precisely replicate the real world of your warehouse. And the beauty is, it allows changes to be planned, tested, and perfected entirely without risk to the ongoing operation.
Could you elaborate a bit on the level of detail needed? What makes this model mathematical and dynamic rather than just a nice visual? What's the secret sauce there?
The fidelity is absolutely the key. So the digital twin replicates all the physical stuff, the exact placement of every shelf, every zone, every pick point, every dock door. That's the visual part. But the mathematical layer, that's where it gets powerful. It incorporates real-world variables. It models the dynamics of flow, using historical data, for instance, to predict how long specific tasks actually take. It tracks operator paths, not just where they should go, but where they tend to go. It knows the speed and turning radius of your forklifts and other equipment. And crucially, it uses real operation times linked to processing different types of orders. It's essentially a living, functional model that operates under the known physical constraints of your actual facility.
Got it. So once you have this incredibly precise virtual replica, the real power comes from running simulations on it. How does that simulation engine let a manager test changes that would just be impossibly expensive and disruptive to try in the real world?
Well, simulation lets management run all sorts of what-if scenarios, but under realistic load conditions. You could, for example, feed the digital twin a whole month's worth of peak season order data, and then watch, maybe in fast motion, exactly where the system starts to choke. It dynamically maps out the material flows, and it precisely identifies those critical areas where bottlenecks, do form, where you've got unnecessary or redundant movements piling up, and exactly where time is being lost during a typical shift. It highlights the inefficiencies. Imagine, say, a company knows a big seasonal increase in orders is coming. They don't have to wait for chaos to hit. They can model that massive influx right now in the digital twin, see that, the packing station is going to be overrun by 10 a.m. every day. And then they can dig deeper and identify the root cause. Maybe it's an inadequate flow path from bulk storage. And the best part, without moving a single pallet, they can test solutions. They could test relocating fast-moving SKUs, maybe test rerouting automated guided vehicles, simulate adding another packer. and see the impact instantly.
That risk-free testing aspect, that really feels transformative, especially when you're running a multi-million-dollar logistics center. A failed layout change in the real world could cost millions in lost productivity, never mind the cost of putting it back.
Absolutely. The core value proposition of the digital twin is really the validation it provides before you commit. Managers can test radically different scenarios. Things like relocating entire categories of inventory, testing completely different shelving arrangements, implementing new, sometimes complex, picking routes, maybe comparing wave picking versus batch picking for their specific order profile, or even changing shift schedules and overlaps to see how that affects flow. All of this testing happens purely in the virtual environment. This means the cost of making a mistake drops effectively to zero, and the business maintains continuous, uninterrupted operations while planning its future state.
So the ultimate goal here is proactive planning. It's about being able to say, with a high degree of confidence, if we make these changes, we will achieve X result, like, say, a 25% reduction in cycle time before a single rack gets moved, or a single dollar is spent on new equipment.
Exactly. It fundamentally shifts the entire function of warehouse management. You're no longer managing based purely on gut feeling or, how things were done last year. You're executing a validated, optimized, predictive strategy. And that moves the warehouse from being just an operational headache, maybe a cost center, to being a calculated strategic asset with performance targets you can actually guarantee. The model essentially validates the business case before you make the investment.
Okay, the digital twin sounds incredibly powerful, but there's always that garbage in, garbage out problem with models. How do modern logistics systems make sure this sophisticated model stays accurate? How does it remain a true, high-fidelity reflection of what's happening right now and not just, a snapshot of how things were last month? This sounds like it needs a living, breathing data backbone.
That's the absolutely critical linkage. You're spot on. The simulation engine gives you that predictive power, sure, but the data backbone provides the current, indisputable truth of the operation. Effective organization, the kind we're talking about, relies on continuously integrating data from basically every relevant system across the enterprise. And this integration, it can be complex. It requires blending information from those big established systems with much more granular localized input.
Let's clarify those core systems then. We often hear acronyms like ERP and WMS thrown around. What are their distinct roles in feeding this data ecosystem?
Sure. So the ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, that's your high-level business system. It handles the big picture, overall financial data, procurement, high-level inventory balances. It tells you what you bought and how many you should own, broadly speaking. Then you have the WMS, the Warehouse Management System. That's much more the execution system on the ground. It manages the tactical details. It tracks specific inventory locations within the warehouse, guides workers through their tasks like picking, and manages the immediate movement of goods.
Okay, so ERP is strategy, WMS is tactics.
In a way, yes, but neither of those traditional systems on their own usually provides the really fine-grained real-time data on movement and performance, like how long things actually take. And that's where things like IoT sensors and warehouse terminals really come into play.
Okay. So the IoT sensors are like the ground truth providers. What specifically are they tracking that the ERP and WMS might miss?
They essentially fill the gap between the plan, what the WMS tells people to do, and the actual performance on the floor. IoT integration provides those foundational inputs you need for genuine real-time optimization. We're talking about sensors on forklifts tracking their movement patterns, their speed, even their idle time. We can use location-based tracking, maybe badges on operators or scanners to generate heat maps of travel, see where people are actually spending their time, identify unexpected detours or bottlenecks. They can monitor ambient conditions too, like temperature, if that's relevant. But most importantly, they track activity duration with micro-precision. How long did that pick really take? How long was that forklift waiting? This real-world data ensures that the digital twin isn't just working off theoretical standards, but is constantly being fed actual measured performance times. It keeps the model honest.
Right. So once you integrate all this information, the ERP business context, the WMS tactical locations, and this granular IoT movement data, what kind of total visibility does the manager actually gain? What can they suddenly see?
The visibility becomes comprehensive and crucially immediate. The manager gains clarity across, let's say, 3 key dimensions. 1, they know the precise location, the quantity, and maybe even specific attributes like batch numbers or expiry dates of every single stock-keeping unit, SKU, in the facility. No more guessing about inventory status.
Okay.
2, they get continuous real-time measurements of the exact time taken for every key activity. Order picking is the classic example. If the standard says it should take 1.5 minutes per line item, but the real-time data shows it's consistently taking 2.1 minutes over in aisle 7, that discrepancy is immediately visible. You know where to investigate. And 3, they receive a live feed on the current utilization of every bit of available physical space. This includes understanding dynamic capacity, changes how full are the pick faces, how much room is left in the staging lanes.
Wow. That level of transparency must allow for management decisions to happen, like right in the moment, which is a complete reversal of the traditional way of doing things, looking at reports from last week.
Exactly. That's the game changer. When a sudden surge order hits, or maybe a key piece of equipment breaks down, the system doesn't just record the failure for someone to analyze next Tuesday. It flags the developing issue in real time. And because all that data is integrated with the predictive digital twin, the manager can instantly run quick simulations. What if we reroute flow this way? What if we adjust staffing here? What if we change the pick strategy for these orders?
Yeah.
They can find the optimal corrective action validated by the model and implement that response within minutes, not days. It transforms the management team from constantly reacting to yesterday's problems to proactively steering the operation through today's turbulence, based on solid data.
It really is the difference between, say, flying a plane and only looking at the flight log after you've landed, versus having a cockpit full of instruments, GPS, radar, live engine telemetry while you're actually in the air. It makes warehouse organization a dynamic science, grounded in verified living data.
Precisely. It creates this kind of closed-loop system of continuous improvement. The model informs reality, suggests changes, and then the real-world data continuously refines the model. The accuracy becomes self-correcting over time.
Okay, data and modeling are clearly essential tools. But for the listener, the question becomes, what do these systems actually recommend doing, and what's the tangible payoff? Let's move from the theory to the practical optimization tactics, and importantly, the verifiable results you've seen mentioned in the source material.
Right. The strategies that come out of this analysis are almost always highly targeted, because they're based on those mathematically validated inefficiencies we talked about. The system isn't just going to suggest a general cleanup. It pinpoints exact actions with predictable outcomes. So some of the most immediate strategies usually involve identifying and correcting inefficient physical layouts and those, convoluted travel routes that often just grew organically over time rather than being logically planned. Specifically, the system might propose very practical space rearrangement. Reorganizing. This could mean changing aisle dimensions, maybe shifting storage media types like moving from static shelving to flow racks, or maybe redesigning the input and output zones to minimize bottlenecks or unnecessary interactions.
And probably the most famous outcome of this kind of data analysis is the strategic placement of inventory, right? Tell us more about optimizing that assortment allocation, allocata assortimento.
Yes, that's often the lowest hanging fruit, but with potentially the highest return. By analyzing real picking data, which items are picked most often, which items often go out together, the system identifies the velocity, the speed of every single SKU. Optimization of assortment allocation then involves making sure that those high-velocity, fast-moving items are strategically positioned closer to the dispensing or output zones, strefi weedo. It's basically the data-driven implementation of the golden zone principle, ensuring that, say, the 20% of your items that generate 80% of the movement are picked in the shortest possible time. This can drastically reduce the longest and most repetitive travel paths for your operators.
Okay, let's ground this now with some specific metrics. We need some verifiable success stories for our listeners. What kind of quantifiable gains are companies actually seeing when they implement this?
The returns are often far beyond just incremental improvements. We're talking about major shifts in efficiency and competitive positioning. For instance, consider the case of a fast-moving consumer goods FMCG manufacturer. Their big challenge was just the sheer volume and speed needed in their picking operation. The simulation analysis identified that a major source of time loss was the scattered placement of their popular promotional items. Pickers were having to travel deep into the warehouse frequently for these high-demand goods. So by using the digital twin to model and then implement a refined golden zone assortment allocation, basically, moving those high-velocity SKUs much closer to the output area, they achieved a reduction in their overall order picking time by a really significant 40%.
Wow, 40%. A 40% efficiency gain on what's likely their most critical labor-intensive task. That's absolutely game-changing. That completely alters their labor cost per unit shipped and boosts their maximum throughput capacity, surely.
It fundamentally changes their operating model, yes. Another fantastic example comes from an international distributor of high-value electronic components. For them, the focus was less on raw speed and more on quality and accuracy. Mistakes were very costly. Their data analysis highlighted that complex, long, and sometimes confusing operator routes were leading to picking errors, especially when pickers had to consult multiple systems or cover wide areas. By simulating and then implementing streamlined, highly logical operator routes, essentially simplifying the task and reducing cognitive load, they achieved a remarkable 35% decrease in shipping errors.
A 35% drop in errors.
Yes. That's a massive leap in quality control. It directly benefits customer satisfaction, reduces the cost of returns processing, protects brand reputation. Huge value.
That really shows that organization isn't just about speed, it's fundamentally about precision and quality too. Now, we also talked earlier about that hidden financial drain of holding too much inventory and needing too much space. Any examples there?
Yes, we see that addressed directly in the case of an automotive company. Their optimization focus was different again. It was about reducing the need for vast amounts of static, dedicated storage space for components. By improving the reliability of their processes, the flow management, and crucially, by increasing the systems and management's trust in the component location data provided by the system, they were able to reduce the required warehouse space by 20%. And importantly, they did this while maintaining zero stockouts and ensuring full component availability to keep the production line running smoothly.
So they essentially got 20% of their expensive warehouse footprint back without building a single new wall or extension.
Exactly. They unlocked latent capacity within their existing infrastructure.
That reduction means they could defer, maybe even completely eliminate, the need for a multi-million-dollar physical expansion. That really highlights the holistic benefit right there, doesn't it? Improving flow, cutting errors, boosting staff satisfaction through better ergonomics, and slashing potential capital expenditure.
That sums it up perfectly. Our sources consistently reinforce that these data-backed strategies lead to, double-digit percentage reductions in operation time, lower costs associated with errors and delays, significantly better utilization of existing space, and also a measurable improvement in team satisfaction because the work environment becomes more logical, less frustrating, and more ergonomic. That organized flow truly delivers quantifiable returns right across the entire enterprise function.
Okay, even with those incredible metrics, the idea of a large-scale reorganization still feels, daunting. How do managers actually execute this kind of transformation? How do you move from the abstract data in the cool simulations to improved physical flow on the ground without causing major disruption? Is there a practical, phased roadmap for this?
Yes, absolutely. The methodology itself demands a very structured, multi-stage approach. It's specifically designed to mitigate those risks of disruption you mentioned. It has to be gradual, and it has to be data-driven at every single step. So step one, rigorous data gathering. This is absolutely non-negotiable. You have to start here. Managers need to compile clean, verified data. That means actual movement data, verified operation times, not just theoretical standards, but what's really happening, and precise inventory location mapping. The success of the entire project hinges on the integrity of this initial data set.
It sounds like this first step might actually be the hardest, especially for facilities that have maybe relied on paper records or older, less integrated systems for a long time.
It often is the moment of truth, yes. It forces a confrontation with reality. Once that data is gathered and cleaned, then comes step two, digital model construction. This is where you build that high-fidelity, interactive warehouse model we discussed, incorporating all the infrastructure, the process logic, the dynamic variables. This becomes the digital sandbox for the entire project. Then, step three is simulation execution. This is the exhaustive testing phase. Managers run potentially hundreds of simulations. They test various proposed layouts, different flow scenarios, new process schedules, maybe different automation levels. They iterate and iterate until the mathematical model confirms which scenario delivers the theoretically optimal efficiency.
And the choice isn't just about maximizing raw speed, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be about balancing speed with cost, maybe implementation difficulty, risk.
Precisely. That leads to step four, analysis and selection. Managers review the detailed simulation results. They compare the predicted performance gains, like that 35% error reduction we talked about, against the projected cost and the likely difficulty of actually implementing the physical changes for each scenario. They then select the optimal verified plan, the one that offers the best balance of return on investment, ROI, with operational feasibility. And finally, step five, staged implementation. This is the execution phase on the warehouse floor, and the key word here is gradual. Physical changes are rolled out in carefully calculated phases, not all at once. And crucially, the effects of each phase are continuously monitored in real time using that same data backbone. This allows managers to compare the real-world results against what the simulation predicted. It ensures you're staying on track with the planned improvements and allows for immediate data-backed fine-tuning if any unexpected variables pop up during the transition.
That staged approach makes a lot of sense. It directly addresses that fear of having to shut down the operation completely. But let's talk about the reality checks. Beyond the technical stuff, what are the main organizational hurdles, maybe cultural hurdles, that this whole methodology is designed to help overcome?
Yeah, the sources consistently point towards internal organizational inertia as a major factor. The first big hurdle is often a deep-seated lack within the organization of current, accurate, and truly objective data on material flows and operation times. Management might be relying on anecdotes, gut feelings, or maybe standards that are years out of date. The beauty of this data-driven methodology, particularly with the IoT integration, is that it forces data transparency. It strips away assumptions and presents verifiable facts, which can be hard to argue with.
It removes the subjectivity.
Exactly. The second major challenge is the inherent difficulty of reconciling a major reorganization effort with the need for continuous, ongoing operations. A warehouse simply cannot stop fulfilling orders for weeks on end. This highlights why you need a profoundly transparent, pre-planned execution strategy, one that explicitly accounts for real working conditions. It means scheduling changes during off-peak windows where possible and strategically phasing the rollout to minimize impact on daily targets. The digital twin plays a vital role here too because it ensures the organization has a clear, proven pathway through what could otherwise be a very disruptive period. It helps turn potential internal resistance, born from uncertainty, into confident execution based on a validated plan.
Okay, we've spent a lot of time really mapping out the micro efficiencies, inside the four walls of the warehouse. Let's pull back now and look at the bigger picture, the macro perspective. Once a warehouse achieves this kind of optimized flow, this level of data-driven control, how does that efficiency ripple outwards? How does it affect the entire enterprise and even the broader supply chain ecosystem?
The effect is truly transformative. Because the warehouse stops being just this isolated cost center, maybe seen as a necessary evil, and it becomes the responsive beating heart of the entire operation. An efficiently organized warehouse generates really profound, wider logistics gains. We see significantly faster delivery times to customers, which obviously boosts satisfaction and competitiveness. Internally, the delivery of components to production lines becomes faster and much more reliable. This reduces manufacturing lead times and, critically, helps eliminate those unexpected production downtimes caused by material shortages. That benefits the entire manufacturing enterprise.
And thinking about instability or growth, this must dramatically change a company's ability to handle fluctuations, right?
Yeah.
How does an optimized system affect that organizational scalability?
It provides immense agility and scalability, yes. Because the organization now possesses this high-fidelity working digital twin, managers can very quickly simulate and then confidently implement flow adjustments to handle sudden changes in volume. Think about seasonal peaks, aggressive holiday surges, maybe the rapid onboarding of a new product line or a big contract win. The warehouse gains operational elasticity. This predictability, this confidence that the logistics hub can handle it, allows the company to commit to growth projects with far less risk. They know, mathematically, that their logistics center can absorb the increased load efficiently.
This level of organizational mastery seems intrinsically linked to a company's broader push towards digitalization, doesn't it? If we connect this back to the technology ecosystem needed to run these solutions, the WMS, the IoT, the modeling software itself, are the benefits to applying the same optimization philosophy to how companies actually acquire and integrate that technology?
Absolutely. This is where you see that same efficiency mindset being applied upstream to the process of becoming more efficient. Historically, the process of evaluating, purchasing, implementing, and optimizing complex industrial automation or software systems, it can be painfully long. Research suggests it often takes an average of around 25 months from start to finish.
2 years, basically.
Yeah, a long time. However, by leveraging more integrated analytical platforms that essentially streamline the technology supply chain itself, applying data principles to the sourcing and integration process, companies can drastically reduce that timeline. The same kind of data transparency used to optimize the flow of goods inside the warehouse can be applied to optimizing the flow of the technology deployment project. Our sources suggest this can cut the time needed for technology implementation by as much as half.
Cutting potentially 2 years down to 1 for implementing major strategic assets like robotics or advanced WMS. That sounds almost unbelievable. What about the cost side of that investment?
Well, the analytical backbone provides that transparency and predictive modeling, not just on warehouse performance, but also on the actual technology needs. By having validated data on required capacities, throughputs, and flows before you go shopping for technology, companies can avoid over-engineering solutions or making unnecessary purchases based on guesswork. This more streamlined, data-driven approach to procurement and integration, perhaps using intelligent marketplace platforms or consultants who leverage this methodology, can save companies around 30% of the cost during that initial purchase and implementation phase.
30% saving on the tech investment itself.
Yes, primarily achieved by reducing integration complexity and ensuring the technology chosen is precisely aligned with the validated needs of the already optimized operation. You're buying what you actually need, based on data, not just what a vendor wants to sell you.
So the core mission gets reinforced again, doesn't it? This is all about establishing measurable, repeatable digital excellence across the entire logistics function. It's about ensuring the optimization efforts stick and that the adoption of the supporting technology is just as efficient and data-driven as the warehouse operation it's ultimately designed to support.
Exactly. It creates this powerful, self-reinforcing competitive advantage. The best data informs the best decisions, which leads to the best operational results, which in turn generates even better data to feed back into the system for continuous refinement. It's a virtuous cycle. Hashtag outro. So I think to summarize the critical learning from this deep dive, the pursuit of order, of efficient flow, in today's complex industrial warehouse. It's really no longer a matter of intuition or just hoping for incremental fixes based on experience. It's become a strategic mandate, and it's achieved through a powerful dual mechanism. First, the absolute transparency provided by comprehensive real-time data collection, and second, the validation offered by risk-free predictive simulation, typically via a digital twin. This combined methodology ensures that every significant physical change is mathematically proven to work before it ever impacts your production schedule or your customer deliveries.
And that level of predictive control, that's really where the strategic value lies, isn't it? These sophisticated tools don't just fix today's problems. They effectively allow you to map out your future operational reality. So we'll leave you, the listener, with this final, maybe provocative thought to ponder. If you could perfectly predict the operational costs, the efficiency levels, and the precise resource requirements of your warehouse 6 months or even a year from now, how would that fundamental certainty change your capital investment strategies today? Knowing those future outcomes transforms a logistics center from being just a reactive necessity, perhaps a cost center, into a predictable, strategic, and highly responsive asset that actively drives market advantage.